it's a potent reminder that it's possible for government and for Democrats to actually serve the public interest. This Health Care Act is even with flaws, is the most important poverty legislation to be passed in the United States in 50 years. Folks may not like it, or some folks may not like it, but it is with us. It meant today that 7 million people did not lose their health care coverage, including 460,000 North Carolinians. I know these folks felt they had to sue from over 30 states because they could not bear the possibility that poor people were getting subsidies for their health care. This would destroy the United States and endanger our status as the most unequal health care system in the world. So we weren't able to pull that off. 93% of North Carolina's 460,000 new enrollees get these subsidies. So the potent impact that has on the state of North Carolina is remarkable. Now then, we could remind our state government that we have 500,000 other people who could be reached under Medicaid if we would simply take the steps to do so. The governor had told us that he needed to get this cleared up, and then apparently he decided he's going to have to just begin thinking about this. It's only 500,000 North Carolinians. It's only 1,000 North Carolinians under the Medicaid expansion who Harvard tells us will die every year as a result of our refusal to take federal funding for this program. So this most important of poverty programs is with us, and it's not going to be dislodged. So I'm glad to celebrate that. I'm glad to be here too in Salisbury. I was remembering the last time I was here was, I think a year or two ago. I don't know, there was a Moral Monday thing down at one of the churches. I had a good lesson that day in not judging the book by its cover that I'll just mention to you. I was supposed to speak at this Moral Monday thing, and I'm terrible at writing down directions, and I couldn't figure out where the church was. I was wandering around, and the witching hour was coming. I was getting nervous. I was missing my occasion, so I was driving here just down this road, and I saw a policeman walking. I said, well, I'll stop and ask him where this Moral Monday demonstration is. And I pulled up behind him, started walking behind him, and I said, sir, and he turned around, and he was a big fella like me, and but unlike me, he had a flat top, and sort of a cranky look on his face, and a little bit of a cigar, and I thought, oh my God, because I was asking, can you please tell me where the Moral Monday demonstration was, and then it occurred to me that might not be a good idea. But as soon as I said it, just so you keep this in mind, he got a big grin on his face, says, yes, sir. You go get in your car, I'll get in my car, you follow me, I'll take you across town, and we'll find that thing. And he did it. So, I'm just saying you never know what you're going to run into on the streets of Salisbury. And it's not always like it looks. I'm going to talk tonight, I'll talk about this a little bit, sort of as a Democrat. I'm glad to be here among Democrats, especially deeply committed ones. I'm going to do that for a reason, but I'd like to celebrate those of you who do this hard work, who are in it for the long haul, inspiring, wise, hot-blooded, passionate, believing Democrats, those who understand the Democratic Party is supposed to be a movement, not a social club, a powerful force for hope and progress, not just a weaker, paler, softer, more confused version of our Republican adversaries. Those are the kind of Democrats, I believe, upon which all depends in North Carolina. Whether we will be, in the years ahead, a state with decency, with character, with optimism, with generosity, whether we will be a democracy, whether we'll simply ditch the aspiration that we began with of liberty and justice for all, whether we will abandon the American promise. I know you think I am engaging in hyperbole, and I'm not beyond hyperbole, I would admit that, but I'm not exaggerating here. Every word I have just said is said with deadly seriousness, no hint of exaggeration. So it's an honor to be with you, sisters and brothers in the struggle. And I suppose this is still odd, but I'm required to say this. I do not speak for the University of North Carolina. The fact is, I'm barely allowed to speak at the University of North Carolina. I think that's pretty obvious by now. And I've discovered, as many unfortunately had to do earlier in life, that love affairs can sometimes be one-sided. The university that I love apparently thinks that I am a pain in its ass, but my affection is nonetheless undeterred. And I stand ready to report that when it comes to this shameful, unforgivable war on poor people, on people of color, on lesbians and gay men, on the environment, on public education, on women, now being waged by the governor and the General Assembly of North Carolina, that the University of North Carolina is studiously neutral. It may be that our decency as a people is in the balance, but we're fine either way it comes out. Though I'm not sure that sweeping in from on high and closing a tiny little, completely privately funded poverty center is a strict neutrality, but what do I know? And then lo and behold, to my surprise, a week ago, the Senate voted to take $3 million from the UNC Law School budget because apparently I work there. They don't like what I write, so they will publish and punish the university. It's as cowardly as it is unconstitutional. We don't believe in people being able to criticize what we do. We'll talk it up. We'll say what the great benefits of our legislative program are. We'll string together litanies of falsehoods about it. But no one should be allowed to question what we say, as if this was North Korea instead of North Carolina. These bully boys, I think, don't believe in democracy. If you'll disagree with us, we're going to try and crush you. We'll make it hard for you to vote. We'll take away your legal aid lawyers. We'll take away your local government prerogative. We'll change the way judges are elected. A dictatorship by the ends. Shame on them. And shame on us if we let them get away with it. So, blunt talk, I know, impolite, but I'm old. Where to start? It's like Lily Thomas said, no matter how cynical I get, I can't seem to keep up. But I would begin with this tiny piece of perspective. Something that a lot of folks in this room know well. These are not normal times. What we face in North Carolina is not the usual give and take, the kind of warp and woof of American politics. We are in a period of redefinition, maybe hoped for revolution. And I don't mean the Jeffersonian kind, but instead one where those in secure and unyielding power in North Carolina, controlling forcefully all three branches of state government and all that attaches to those three branches, seek to make our state, remake it into a lesser an unworthy entity. In heady aspiration to convert North Carolina to Alabama, or Mississippi, or Louisiana, or South Carolina, they are well underway. They are winning. They are being successful in this process. A series of moves that defies our history, our traditions, our best aspirations, our constitutions, our religious tenets. A tidal wave of suppression and marginalization and enshrinement of privilege that has not occurred here in 50 years or 100 years, depending on how you look at it. This is, in other words, not normal politics. It's not the way things usually are. We live in dangerous times, challenging times. I wish it weren't so, but it ain't any good acting like it's something other than what it is. So to start, we have in North Carolina a potent war on people of color. Our adversaries, as you know, hold huge majorities in both houses of the General Assembly. Though our state is 23% African American, the Republican caucuses of the House and the Senate have no black members, none. So when our legislators retire into their caucuses to craft our policies, to repeal the Racial Justice Act, to racially gerrymander our legislative districts, to pass voter restrictions aimed largely at African Americans, to reject the Medicaid expansion, to demolish unemployment compensation, to abolish, as the Senate just has attempted to do, the Fair Housing Office, to limit welfare benefits. No black member rises to address the issues. A white governor and all-white cabinet round out the sweep. Some will say this is impolite to mention. Maybe it is. Accurate, but impolite. It's apparently okay to govern as a white people's party. It's just not okay to notice it. It explains, too, why we're in such a hurry, Robert. You will not be able to govern North Carolina in 10 years or 15 years or 20 years as a white person's party unless you can successfully stop people of color from voting. So they better get while the getting's good. And the getting is good as we speak. Second, a stunning and surprising to me war on women in North Carolina. And I'm not talking about a cultural war or an intellectual war or dispute about feminism. I mean instead a war in which our legislature passes a law saying that if a woman seeks an abortion in North Carolina, we're going to enlist her doctor, her body, in a coerced campaign to intimidate her out of the exercise of her constitutional rights. We're going to force her to undergo and to pay for a sonogram without medical benefit or need, against her will, against her doctor's will, against her doctor's advice, displaying the results in her face despite her protest, forcing a doctor to mouth the Soviet-style legislative script, even if he believes it's harmful to his patient, in an astonishing act of totalitarianism. I know when I think of what a doctor ought to be saying to a patient in a time of jeopardy and intimacy, I'm hoping the litany will be written by the North Carolina legislature. And then they effectively tell us, like the Virginia legislature, you ought to consider yourself lucky that we didn't require that something be actually placed inside a woman's body to get her attention. There's no limit, apparently, on what one thinks one might do if God is on your side. And all this by the same people who tell us, and they told us today, that it is too great an interference with individual freedom to be forced to have health insurance. I am surprised the words didn't turn to ashes in their mouths. But government by perjury is becoming a specialty. Third, the unrelenting war on gay people in North Carolina. They began on the recent front, of course, with Amendment 1, writing command of discrimination and marginalization and humiliation into the text of our Constitution, paralleling perfectly our earlier constitutional amendment, saying that black people can't marry white ones, with exactly the same motivation of supremacy and derision. Then when the federal courts and the Supreme Court make it clear that Amendment 1 is unconstitutional and can't be enforced, our legislative leaders literally throw hundreds of thousands of dollars away to intervene and appeal in a case that's already over, all for one single purpose: to prove to their constituents, yet again, how much they despise our lesbian and gay sisters and brothers. And then in recent weeks, we passed a stunning law that says our government officials don't have to offer their services to gay people. Gay people have to pay for the salaries, but employees don't have to serve the people who pay them. And as our legislative leaders hoot and high-five and holler, pleased with themselves, and see how spiteful we can be on this front. We can lead the nation in repression. Aren't you proud of us? And finally, this betraying, defining, cutting-edge evil war on poor people in North Carolina. Representative Cleveland of Onslow County sort of helps to launch it by announcing that there is no one in North Carolina actually lives in poverty. As over 22% of the kids in Cleveland's own county, Onslow, live in wrenching poverty, and 11% of the children in his district live in extreme poverty on incomes of less than $11,500 a year for a family of four. Over 400 kids in the Onslow School District are registered as homeless. Apparently he ain't met them. We did at the Poverty Center try to introduce him to some, but he wasn't interested. I guess that should come as no surprise from a gang led by a Speaker of the House who's now a United States Senator, Senator Nichols, who said, and I want to be fair, let me get these words exactly right. Nichols would say this: what we have to do in North Carolina is find a way to divide and conquer the people who are on assistance. We have to show respect for that woman who has cerebral palsy and has no choice in her condition. And we need to get those folks to look down at the people who choose to be in a dependent position on the government. I always have to stop for a minute, so let that sink in, let it wash over me. We need to get cerebral palsy victims to look down on the unemployed and the destitute of North Carolina. Treat them with appropriate derision and disdain. Now that is a high-minded view of politics. I'm surprised John Kennedy didn't include it in his inaugural address. Or like Richard Burr's claim on the floor of the Senate 2 years ago, that poor parents trying to secure Medicaid coverage for their children are, quote, pigs at the trough. That's what he said, and see the tape. Should have been expelled from the Senate. While more North Carolinians tonight, in raw numbers, live in wrenching poverty than in any moment in our long history. 18% of us, a quarter of our kids. 41% of our children of color. Think of that. Over 4 in 10 of our babies, our middle schoolers, our teenagers of color live in wrenching poverty. While Greensboro, North Carolina, the federal government just told us, is the hungriest city in the United States. The greatest food insecurity, the very hungriest. When North Carolina has the second highest percentage of hungry babies in the United States, just a hair behind Louisiana. Where Charlotte, North Carolina has the worst income mobility in America. If you are born poor in Charlotte, you are more apt to stay that way, Harvard tells us, than anywhere else in the United States. I guess Harvard's recommendation, if you're a poor kid, you're born poor in Charlotte, you better move quick as you can. Where the state of North Carolina has seen, over the last decade, the steepest rise in concentrated poverty in the nation. and our governor and our legislators look at these massive sins against equality, and they work feverishly to make them worse. And then they brag about it, cutting 500,000 poor Tar Heels off of Medicaid. Though, as I said, it means, the studies tell us, that 1,000 or more every year will die. Think of casting that vote. If you'll cast a vote which says it's okay with me if 1,000 people die, rather than look like I'm cooperating with Obama, then what won't you do? You'll also usher in, as we have, the largest cut to an unemployment compensation program in American history. We abolished the Earned Income Tax Credit so that working families making about $35,000 a year have to pay more to the taxman. Raising the bill, literally raising the bill for 930,000 North Carolinians so that we could pay for a tax cut that would go to the richest 2% of North Carolinians. Even though they already capture more of our income and our wealth than has occurred in 100 years. So I hate to bring this news, but we are in a fight. It's not beanbag. It's not badminton. We could wish it weren't so. We could wish it wasn't as challenging as it is, that there weren't such forces of wealth and power and privilege arrayed against it, that it wasn't such an uphill effort, it wasn't so against the odds, that it was easier sledding, that it was more certain of success, but it is what it is. And the apostles of American democracy have faced tough roads before. I am pretty sure Fannie Lou Hamer didn't do an opinion poll before she started the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. And Rosa Parks didn't conduct a focus group before she sat down for freedom. Cesar Chavez didn't ask if it would be lauded or praised or ideal before he launched his famed hunger strike. He said, no, si se puede. This is not the first time people of great courage and great heart in this room, in this state, have been called upon to fight for justice against the odds. This party, the Democratic Party, started over 200 years ago. And it started in a fight between Jefferson and Hamilton. Jefferson stood strong for the future, committed to democratic decision-making, citizen participation, and humane ideals. Hamilton represented a gaggle of moneyed interest, happy enough to leave the rest of us out. We face the same choices today. Will we choose to be the heirs of Jefferson, recognizing both the rights and the responsibilities of citizens? Because in the end, the obligations of citizenship are less like ideas than they are deeply felt emotions like courage and commitment. And ultimately, they're to be found only within our own hearts. And I know that some have grown cynical. I understand it. And some have given up hope, and they don't believe that we can win this daunting battle. But imagine saying that to Harry Truman, or Frank Graham, or Robert Kennedy, or Julius Chambers, or Barbara Jordan, or Paul Wellstone, or Molly Ivins. Or think of saying it to John Lewis. Cynicism has no more place in the Democratic Party than privilege does. So we ask you again, even more powerfully, to enroll your spirits, to enlist your hearts as we face this challenge, to make this defining cause our own. To enlist because, when you think about it, somewhere we read, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all are created equal. And somewhere we read of one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And somewhere we read that history will judge us on the extent to which we've used our gifts to lighten and enrich the lives of our fellows. And somewhere we read, of course, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And somewhere we read, think of this, maybe we ought to try believing the things we teach our children. Believe them and make them real. And somewhere we read, of course, that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And when I look around this room, a lot of people in this room read whenever you did these things for the least of these, you did them for me. And that same group read, you reap what you sow. And somewhere we read that the pursuit of justice and the pursuit of happiness can be as one. They march not in opposite directions, but hand in hand. And somewhere we read, no, we are not satisfied with this. We will not accommodate ourselves to it. We are not satisfied, and we will not be satisfied till justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Thank you for letting me join you.